Welcome to the Dubcast with Dubside. This is a special guest edition of the Dubcast. I'll be talking to Kevin and Nicky Mansel, who I only came to discover after talking to them are very experienced kayakers with many years of involvement in the BCU, the British Canoe Union, and they have a very open and embracing attitude towards the Greenland paddle. This runs for somewhat longer than an hour, so if you're used to the half-hour Dubcast, you can take this in installments. We start off talking about travel in Greenland that they've done quite a bit of. Goes into BCU administration things. They mentioned Kampe Absalonsen, a big personality in Greenland when he was alive. And towards the end, we get into teaching, philosophy, techniques, and ideas. So it is it's not even January, what is it? It's October 2023, and we're winding down the end of Delmarva this year, and we're here at Camp Arrowhead in Delaware. And I'm talking to
Kevin Mansel.
Kevin Mansel.
Yeah.
And Nicky Mansel.
Nicky Mansel.
Yeah.
All right, very good. And so you have been kayaking, both of you, for quite some time, and are quite knowledgeable about kayaking. So tell me about your background and where you're from, and I think we can tell right away you're not a straight-up American with a beautiful accent like you have.
I started kayaking in 1969.
Wow.
When I was young, and you have off-the-cuff comments as what you'd like for Christmas, I put out there one June day probably to my dad that I'd like a canoe, inverted commas, kayak, for Christmas. Never thought about it again, moved on to other things I'd quite like. And then Christmas Day, walked into the room, into the lounge, and there was a fiberglass KW7, which at the time was a state-of-the-art whitewater kayak, really. And it changed my life forever.
Uh-huh. So what were some of your first voyages you took, if you can remember?
So I was living, and I still live, on Jersey, a small island off the coast of France. For those of you who are interested in the dairy industry, it's where the cows come from. The Jersey cow was from our island. And we have the most fantastic kayaking waters. We have granite cliffs, we have west-facing beaches. So to the west of us, the nearest land is Newfoundland. So our latitude is 49 degrees north. To the east, 14 miles away, is the Normandy coast of France. We have a big tidal range. Springs, our tidal range is about 12 metres. So that creates fairly interesting conditions from which you learn your craft. And I was really lucky early on. I fell in with some other teenage boys whose parents had bought them kayaks. And we just explored initially the waters down our local bay, St. Bernard's Bay, which is still one of my absolute favourite places to paddle. And over the years, we extended our horizons a little bit more.
Well, it sounds like there's some pretty serious water in that area. So how did you, just starting out, prevent yourself from getting killed? Were there knowledgeable coach-type people around then, or what?
There was one person, a man called Brian Sykes, who was sort of my mentor, really, and he took me under his wing. He was also the person who built my kayak, and he just encouraged me to go paddling and with other people, but it wasn't hands-on. It was a few ideas, and then we'd go off and we'd practice ourselves. We took some big swims. We learned to roll quite early on, so I think I did my first roll in about 1970. He taught us how to rescue, and then in 72 he took me away with his family, and we went kayaking in the former Yugoslavia. We kayaked around Venice in 72, other parts of the Italian coast, the French Riviera. And so I was just really privileged at the age of 16 to go on this European kayaking tour for 6 weeks.
Wow. Well, I feel like I should just shrivel up into a hole and forget about it, because this real experience we got here. You're in the Derek Hutchinson caliber. Yes, long years of all kinds of experiences. Wow, I'm impressed. When did the BCU come into influence here? British Canoe Union.
Yeah, so it was the British Canoe Union when I joined. I think I joined in 1970. I can tell you that my BCU number is 15478, and they're now in nearly 700,000. So I've been in it a long time. And so I got my first qualifications in the mid-70s. I became a leader and coach by 1980. And I really have supported British canoeing as it is now over the years. I've been on national committees for 43 years. I've just resigned. I was chair of the Sea Kayaking Technical Committee, and I've just, after 43 years, stood down from almost a lifetime of employment in a voluntary capacity by British Canoeing.
Wow. So kayaking wasn't your primary means of subsistence, of income. You had other jobs, or?
Yeah, I was a school teacher, and so I became a head teacher. So I ran a number of schools on Jersey over the years, and because of that, I was really fortunate. You know, I didn't rely upon kayaking for my income. I was able to, if people offered me opportunities to go and guide or to coach, I could say yes if I wanted to. If I didn't want to, then I could just say, I'm sorry, I'm really busy. And so I was in an unbelievably fortunate position that I've been able to go around the world and, you know, go to some fantastic places, meet some amazing people, and deliver British canoeing courses or take people out on trips and such like. It's just been a privileged existence.
So, Nicky, can we hear from you? Can you weigh in on this?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I didn't really... I did some when I was at school, some kayaking on a boating lake, basically. I think it was with the guides and school. I didn't really start kayaking until after I'd left university, and I worked in an outdoor centre, and then sort of used to go paddling on rivers a bit, on a lake. I was on Lake Windermere, based there in the Lake District. So yes, and it wasn't really until Kevin and I got together that we started to do some big trips. I mean, the first trip I ever did was to Denmark, and we spent four weeks paddling around the southern islands of Denmark, and that was the first sort of trip. And that's my love, is exploring from a kayak. Really, that's what I really enjoy doing.
So tell me about the model of kayak you were using back then, in that time period.
Well, I had Islander, I think it was called, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was made by a man called Jeff McGladdery at Y Kayaks. And
it was a brilliant kayak for surfing, because it had quite a short back and a really long front. So I do remember one day in Denmark, me accelerating down this fjord on very small waves while Kevin's Nordkapp wasn't doing quite the same speed, which was unusual, because usually I was tagging along at the back.
Okay. So a Nordkapp you were using then?
Yeah, quite early on, really. The Jersey Canoe Club was formed in 1974, and there's still two of us who were the original members, founders, myself and Derek Heron, who is a well-known sea kayaker in Britain. He did the first circumnavigation of Ireland. And Frank Goodman from Valley Canoe Products came over to Jersey on a regular basis, promoted the Nordkapp, and it's still a really popular kayak in Jersey, is the Nordkapp. I had a Nordkapp HM, which was the classic one with the small hatches, ocean cockpit, and used that for a number of years. And then in 2011, I got a Nordkapp LV, slightly bigger cockpit, bigger hatches, and then more recently I bought a Nordkapp 40. And in Jersey, there's been this resurgence of interest in Nordkapps as a kayak. And the last weekend in August, I ran with somebody else a Nordkapp weekend, and we had 30 people turn up and you could only come if you had a Nordkapp. Yeah. And so all models of Nordkapps turned up in Jersey over that weekend. It was just a great thing to see.
Is a Nordkapp it's the model, but is that the manufacturer of that, or how's that?
The manufacturer is Valley Sea Kayaks.
Valley makes it. That's
yeah.
right, Valley makes it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, if you said there was a resurgence of interest, why was there a decline? What caused that?
I think people, for their main kayak, moved away from having ocean cockpits. I think they found the small cockpit a bit restricting.
Nordkapp only comes with an ocean cockpit?
The original ones did, the Nordkapp HM. Okay. So people moved into tide race kayaks, for example. There's a large number of those in Jersey. And just had bigger cockpits. They bought plastic kayaks, so the Avocet, for example, which is a Valley kayak. Yeah. So there's a wider range of kayaks paddled in Jersey now, but the Nordkapp is still a very popular kayak on the sea.
All right. Is the day hatch a later innovation, or did the early kayaks have the third hatch behind the cockpit?
That was a much later innovation. Okay. So my current Nordkapp HM I bought in '85, and it wasn't on the radar then to have a third hatch. Do
you think that's an advantage or not?
I love it. I think the day hatch is a real advantage, and the fact that we used to have a big gap behind the seat.
In the cockpit compartment.
In the cockpit because that's where we used to fit our pump. So in those days, everybody had a deck-mounted pump on the rear deck. So it was pretty unstable.
You reach back with a handle and put it up and down. Yeah.
The old chimp pump, and you'd have to pump the thing out. And I suppose with experience, we thought, well, that's still quite a big space for water. Why don't we move the hatch or move the bulkhead forward? Then you've got less room, and then you can rescue the kayak and just turn up, and the water falls out much quicker than pumping out.
Well, I've heard the opinion voiced that a day hatch in really big rough water, to reach back there and get something out, you're just going to get water in it. So there's lack of practicality there, and then plus the fact that an extra bulkhead adds weight to the kayak. So for that sense, maybe a day hatch isn't that great. But if you're not in big, huge, rough seas and you just want to get that quick little thing and need a third compartment, and that extra strength from another bulkhead, that's the other side of it.
I just think it's a perfect place to keep stuff you might need during the day, even if you don't need it on the water. So you can keep your lunch in there, your thermos flask, a small first aid kit, perhaps a small group shelter. So you can keep a range of stuff in there. I rarely open my day hatch on the water. Okay. It's what I open when I land.
Yeah, all right, that makes sense. Well, I've always been curious that, for a lot of the arrangements on a deck of a kayak, finding the perfect spot, say for the skeg control, is always, it keeps getting moved around. There's always a disadvantage to something. You can't find the perfect thing, or the way the skeg is, whether it's a cable or a cord or what have you. And so with pumps, I remember seeing Nigel Dennis kayaks went through a couple of different variations, and there was one. It was the rubber bulb in the middle of the bulkhead where you should push it with your feet, and the water would come out a spout on the side. Now I think you can't get better than that. Why would you do anything less than that? A hand thing or a thing? If you can pump with your feet and keep on paddling, that's it. Like, why would anybody develop anything else or stop using that? Can you enlighten me on that?
I mean, I had my second Nordkapp had a small foot pump on it. Lendl, who you remember, paddle manufacturers used to make a foot pump, and so I could use that. But what you find, if you lend somebody your kayak, you got different size shoes on or whatever, it's difficult to adjust the pump when you've got your foot pegs in there as well. So I think people, and I think people started to think, I don't need all this piping around my legs. When I'm getting in and out, it makes it more of a challenge at times, particularly if you're getting in the water. You end up with the tube wrapped around your feet, and it's just a bit inconvenient.
I'd forgotten about, besides the bulb, you got to have the pump ductwork thing to get the water to move around. All right, I understand that now. That makes sense.
And I think hand pumps also got much better.
So back then the hand pumps didn't work?
Just an ordinary, hand pump. I don't remember ever seeing one early on, but now that's what we would always carry with us, really.
Okay. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. I've seen they've designed the electric pumps, and in my experience, you know that battery's going to fail when you most need it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people with electric pumps, and I just wouldn't go near them. In my personal opinion, because I'm not a practical person. So if it goes wrong, I might as well just throw it away.
Yeah. All right. So, if you've been involved with the BCU administratively from way back, I see a wealth of information here. Now, in this country, in my experience with traditional paddling, which only goes back 20 years or so, we had quite a contentious situation where the Greenland paddle wouldn't get any real respect from people trained in the BCU and even the ACA circles, and there was a lot of animosity between the two, and plenty of stories about people taking a BCU class with a Greenland paddle and just being told you can't use that thing, you have to use a Euro paddle. And I've seen it change, and we've got a much more relaxed attitude about it and much more tolerance, and we can learn from both schools. So do you encounter all that, and where did you, I mean, you're here at a Greenland event, and you've obviously picked up on the traditional paddling and acknowledging it. If not, I mean, you still are using a Euro paddle quite a bit and enjoy that tradition or that style.
Yeah, I first came here to learn new skills. So I came here in 2019 and thought, I've seen Greenland paddles in use. I was in the process of making my own, and I thought, I'd heard of this event for years, but could never come because I was a teacher and it's in term time.
Okay.
So 2019 we came, and I think one of the difficulties is actually getting information in the UK on how you use the paddles differently.
Yeah.
So you came here, and I remember going to a workshop, and for me the enlightening moment was when Don Beale said to me in 2019, just slightly cant your knuckles slightly forward and it'll stop the flutter of the blade going through the water. Mm-hmm. That was like the key to a whole new world.
Okay.
And it was the light bulb moment. And since then we still paddle with our Euro paddles, and we use our Greenland paddles. For me, what really cemented it, if you like, into my so it's automatic was this year when we went to Greenland this year. I only took my Greenland paddle. So we did 205 nautical miles on the trip, and I paddled it with a Greenland paddle. I didn't have the cop out of being able to pick up my Euroblades if I was feeling I needed to change. Wow. So I committed to it this summer by paddling on a trip. And so, but we switch backwards and forwards. Right. You know, I think they've both got their advantages. They've both got the disadvantages.
So tell me about those advantages and disadvantages. Like, elaborate on that.
Where I still struggle with Greenland paddles is if you're playing in tide races, or you're in a down following sea. I struggle, and that's probably my poor technique, I struggle to get the acceleration quickly enough which I need to pick up the wave, particularly in a tide race. Yeah. So if you've got the waves are coming behind you, normally you just sort of feel as the stern of the kayak starts to lift. If I've got my Euro paddles, I can just put the power on 2 or 3 strokes, pick up the wave, surf off down the face of the wave, and I'm playing in the tide race. I'm still struggling to get that degree of acceleration with my Greenland paddles.
Okay.
But that's probably my poor technique.
Perhaps. I won't confirm or deny that. So what would be on the other side of it? What would be the advantage with a Greenland paddle or disadvantage of a Euro paddle?
I think the touring aspect, the lack of stress on the body, particularly. I mean, people have moved into using smaller blades anyway.
Okay.
You know, even Euro blades have become smaller. We always used to paddle with things at 90 degrees, which were the size of a shovel, you know, on the end. And obviously something like that's going to have a real impact on your body and your joints. And so people have switched, still with the Euroblade style, but into smaller blades.
Okay.
I think, on days when you're looking to do, comfortable 15, 20 nautical mile day, the Greenland paddle just allows you to get into a rhythm and to just almost switch off.
Yeah.
And just at the end of the day, you arrive at your beach or your final destination, and your joints don't feel as if they've taken such a hammering.
All right. Yeah. How about you, Nicky?
Yeah, I would say the same thing, actually. I really like using the Greenland paddle and have done at home a lot recently. We got a lovely wooden pair from Anders in 2019. My issue is in rougher water with them. I don't ever feel they have quite the grip if you're you're wanting to do a bit of a brace or even a quick turn. And in Greenland this summer, I had a Greenland paddle and I had a Euroblade. And the first 2 days we had some quite rough weather when I was using the Greenland paddle, and felt I didn't have quite the control that I would have had with the Euro, and I did change back to the Euroblade. So it's a bit of a mix and match. But I love especially I like the feeling of the wooden blades, because I just like the feel of it, really. I think it sort of, I don't know what it is. It's like in a canoe, when you've got a wooden canoe paddle, it's the same sort of, you can somehow, the strokes feel nicer than using a fiberglass or carbon blade.
Right. Have you tried any carbon fiber Greenland paddles?
Yes, we've got some, actually, because we've got the sort which you can then travel with. So, I like them, but I think, this weekend I've used the wooden blades again quite a bit, and I do like the feeling of the wood. I like the give it gives, and just the way they feel.
We've got a few pairs of carbon Greenland paddles.
Yeah, okay.
And because we travel quite a lot, it's just so easy to take them apart.
Yeah.
And I know you can get take apart wooden ones, but we actually hadn't seen those until this week.
Really?
So we've got take apart carbon. We took them to Baja earlier this year, and then we took them to Greenland. So they're just easy to travel with.
Yeah. When you travel to far places, do you bring a kayak, or do you find one locally, or how does that work?
So the first time I went to Greenland was in '93, and we shipped our Nordcaps out.
Okay.
And we shipped them out at the beginning of May, and we got them back in November, which is, a big time to be without your kayak.
Yeah.
Since then, we have got our club, the Jersey Canoe Club. We now own 8 kayaks on the west coast of Greenland in Ilulissat. So when we go to Greenland, we can just use the club kayaks. Other places, within Europe, if we can go to France really regularly, we would take our own kayaks. But further afield, we would just borrow kayaks or rent kayaks. Okay. I've got to say, I've paddled some pretty dreadful kayaks, but in some pretty amazing places.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it may not be the kayak you would choose, but the place you're in, the scenery, the backdrop, the experience, more than makes up for the fact that you're not in the perfect kayak.
Yeah. So you said you first went to Greenland in '93?
Yep.
Okay. And where was that in Greenland?
That year we paddled from Sisimiut to Ilulissat.
Okay. Oh, nice.
So,
how did that compare with other places you paddled, or your expectations, or just tell me about the experience of that trip?
So Nicky mentioned our trip to Denmark, which was in '81. Then in '83, I went away with 6 of us, went and we paddled the west coast of Svalbard for 2 months, which was 600 nautical miles. And that was a pretty remote place. Nobody went there then. We had to take guns. We did have polar bears around the tents. And that was interestingly, to go back a stage, that was the first kayaking trip that we're aware of that left Britain, which used dry suits.
Oh, yeah?
Dry suits had just come out because of the windsurf market. And there was this theory that if you capsized in a kayak wearing a dry suit, all the air rushed to your feet, you were suspended upside down and you couldn't get out of your kayak.
Okay.
Well, Typhoon, the manufacturers, lent me a dry suit, and I went and sat offshore and put this in my Nordcap with this dry suit on. Yeah. Nobody else came afloat, and I had to actually capsize and come out of my kayak thinking I'm not going to drown here, but there was certainly this thought that you would drown if you wore a dry suit.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've survived, so I'm here. So yeah, in '83, that was a landmark sort of trip, really.
So these were non-breathable dry suits, correct? Yeah.
And then in '86, we ran a club trip and we paddled from Tromsø around Nordkapp to Honningsvåg. So that was another 4-week expedition in the Arctic. But all the time in the background, in your mind, you're thinking, we'd really like to go to Greenland. And some people I've met had said, Greenland's like Svalbard, except the icebergs are bigger, the mountains are bigger, and everything like this. So in '93, we organised a trip, and we really didn't know where to choose. So we looked at 2 locations which had air connections. So we flew into Kangerlussuaq and then down to Sisimiut, and we paddled north for 4 weeks and flew back from Ilulissat.
Ah, all right. How did you work the food for that trip? Did you bring all your food with you, or get supplied there at the towns there? How did you?
Well, I'm embarrassed to admit this, that in that trip in '93, because we really didn't have an understanding of Greenland, we took our food with us.
Okay.
Every other trip that we've done since, we've always bought every bit of food that we need in Greenland.
Yeah. All right.
And, I've had people contact me and say, we're going to Greenland, what do you reckon about food? I say, you buy it there.
Right.
It's really important that, we put at least some money into the local economy. Mm-hmm. Because if you're out on a 17-day trip, 18-day trip, you're not spending any money.
Yeah.
And if you can buy your food there, it's just helping, I think.
Yeah. So what are there things that you can't find there that you would like, or you can get more or less what you need?
There's always alternatives. Okay. So you can go in with, and most of the time you can find exactly what you want. Discovering porridge was what the Greenlandic was for porridge is always a challenge, but we managed to do that.
Different from what you would have for porridge.
Yeah.
How is that?
We weren't sure what the word was for porridge, and it was. Yeah? But we always managed to find it, and the most important kayaking food is Haribo, the little sweets. So at the end of the day, on any trip,
candy stuff, right?
Yeah. So at the end of any trip, on any trip we go on, at the end of the day, when we get to the beach, we stand there and we have 4 or 5 Haribo, and we reflect on the day. Because otherwise, what happens is you hit the beach, everybody rushes off in different directions to put their tents up, and there's no sense of joined experience that we've had. So we always have a Haribo moment, and you can buy Haribo anywhere in the world. That's not a commercial. Other sweets are available, but you can stand there and you can say, 3 fin whales today, or actually we saw so many seals today, probably more than we've ever seen, or what a fantastic iceberg, or the same if you're in Baja, or if you're in British Columbia, or wherever. You can just have those moments which you share as a group, which creates, I think, a really close-knit community whilst you're on the water. Yeah.
It reminds me of, in yoga, at the end of a yoga session, you lie on the floor in Shavasana. And the idea being that you put your body through all of these positions and exercise things and strain things, hopefully not strain them, and now you just need to take that moment to absorb all that, because if you rush and go do something, you miss out on getting the full value of that. And so applying that to a group situation when paddling, I can see that's rather profound, I think, to stop when you land and just take it in.
Just take that moment to that shared experience, that location you've got to has required so much effort, perhaps over such a long period of time in terms of planning and acquiring the skills necessary to go. We should share that moment. It's really important that's what we do.
Yeah. Wow. Have you done any catching local food, like hunting, fishing type of things to get food while you're out paddling?
Yeah, we fished quite often when we've been there. We didn't this year, partly because with fishing, you can't do it as you go along.
Okay.
It's got to be something that you do deliberately at the end of the day.
Okay.
So, you know, you land and you have to partly empty your kayak, perhaps, and then you go back out. So we didn't fish this year, but we did, for example, we bought frozen muskox meat. And
I love muskox.
Yeah. And so on another trip, we bought frozen seal meat and then just let it thaw in the bottom of the kayak over a period of about 24, 36 hours.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we if we go to the restaurants, for cafes, we would eat whale meat in the right location. You know, I wouldn't eat it in London, but it's in Ilulissat, I wouldn't think twice.
We have also had halibut given to us by fishermen when we've been there, so which has been really good.
Yeah.
And found mussels as well, and mushrooms.
So, have you been kayaked in the south of Greenland?
No, it's always been north.
Okay.
So I've paddled all the coast from Sisimiut to Umanak.
Yeah.
Over the years. And so it's an area I like. You know, for me, there are three things which as kayakers make Greenland so special, apart from the cultural aspects of it, is, you know, 24 hours of daylight, fantastic ice formations, and ideally, no bears. And so if you sort of think about the Sisimiut North and particular Disco Bay and just beyond there, it ticks all the boxes. And
when you say ideally no bears, you mean they're like Svalbard, you have lots of bears and you have to deal with that.
And it's just really inconvenient to take guns, you know, and to make sure that the guns work. And when you go to bed, you've got to put tripwires around the tents and all that sort of thing just to ensure your safety. And even then, when a polar bear arrives outside your tent, you know, it's not a relaxing experience.
Oh, sure.
Particularly when you're in bed. We had one which was standing outside our tent.
Yeah.
And so, so I don't really feel the need to repeat that experience. So that's why in Greenland, the areas we go to, bears they may be there in the summer, but they're so rare that you probably don't need to take it into account.
I've heard of people with expeditions, they have, within the last, 10 or so years, the electric fence thing, the little shock wire that you can run around your camp, I'm told is somewhat effective. Have you ever used those?
That's what we had in Svalbard, and it was linked to an alarm which made this noise.
Okay. So it's an alarm. It wasn't a shock them and they woke up the wire. It's just an alarm.
Just an alarm. Oh. The trouble was the bear stepped over it.
So it didn't ring.
So it didn't ring. So, you know, the bear's got to trip the thing for it to work. But if the bear's walking around, it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to put his foot on the wire. What happened was loads of Arctic foxes set this thing off. So every other night you'd be leaping up thinking there's a bear, and actually it was just an Arctic fox.
See. Hard to get any sleep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when you go on these trips, is it fellow paddlers, or do you like clients type, you know, people pay and you lead the trip thing?
No, I've only ever done that once, which was quite a long time ago. I took a group of French paddlers to Greenland, but the rest of the time it's pretty much people from our club in Jersey.
Okay. Yeah.
We've got a really active club. It's a really active paddling community in Jersey, on sea kayaks, on stand-up paddle boards, on playboats, in surf, and so there are always people in the club who would be keen to go away on trips.
Okay, yeah. So when you teach kayaking techniques and things, is that through a club, or at a symposium, or for various situations, or how does that happen?
So in 1992, we organised the first Jersey Sea Kayak Symposium. And we ran it every 2 years, apart from 3, up until 2019.
Wow.
And you would attract 100, 120 paddlers every 2 years to the event. And it had a good reputation, and we attracted, we managed to encourage some significant coaches to come to give their time and their expertise. So yeah, I've worked at symposiums in Jersey, in Scotland, in Spain, in British Columbia, Nova Scotia, and in France. So I've been to a number of symposiums that we've worked at. But a lot of my coaching is done within the club.
Okay. Tell me, for an entry or beginner level class, and this could be any stroke technique or any aspect of that, what would be like one of the most common, I don't know if mistake is the word, but just sticking point for a beginner coming in that it takes a while to impart to them, or the real lesson that gets them to the next level?
The most important thing, if you have a group of first-time kayakers, is you've got to make it so that they want to come the second time.
Oh, as the instructor?
As the instructor,
yeah, okay.
That is your job, to make sure that they want to come back the second time. At the end of that session, those people need to get off the water and they need to think that sea kayaking is the best thing since sliced bread. That's what they have to do. That's your job. You've got to sell sea kayaking. And I don't think you're going to sell it if you're sitting there going through stroke after stroke after stroke. What it is, it's about giving them a couple of very simple skills. Simple idea about how to paddle forwards and what to do in the event of a capsize. And then take them on a little journey down the coast, point out a few historical sites, a bit of geology, a bit of wildlife, talk about what the opportunities which exist within kayaking for further progression, and just sell it to them. You know, don't sit there for 2 hours talking about the finer points of paddle placement, you know, where that blade goes in the water. They don't need to know it then. What they need to do is they need to come back another time and another time. You've got to sell it to them. So I don't get hung up on about what I'm going to cover on an introductory session. I'm just going to try and give them a really positive time, so they come back, and then I can start to work with them.
Have you been involved in the various curriculum setting with BCU classes? And because that's changed, or I remember doing the 3-star training, and I don't think I did the 4-star training, but then they changed the whole structure, so the old 4-star was the new 3, or I don't know what it was, but I'm sure, you know, over the years you're always adjusting the curriculum and things. But are there any notable eras when you went, you know, were around through that of they changed something, and why things were changed, or what was?
So I've been responsible since the late 80s for writing most of the syllabuses.
Well, so you're the guy, huh? Oh,
so I think I first rewrote the advanced syllabus in 1989.
Yeah.
And we've revisited it a number of times over the years, and you know, and the number of the people who've been involved has changed. You know, it might be Howard Jeffs, it might be Nigel Dennis having input into these various awards.
Okay.
But you know, the last one was I coordinated the Sea Kite Leader, which was the old 4-star.
Okay.
But the biggest.
So right now, currently, you don't have the 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star anymore. What is it? How is it now?
So now,
I mean, I know there's the coach and the assessor, and
Yeah.
It gets very confusing. But
so now there's Start, Discover, and Explore, and they're the old STAR tests, 1 and 2, really. So we've just given them a name instead of giving them STAR tests. They have a name. Start, Discover,
okay.
Start, Discover, and
Discover, Explore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then there's the secret.
I thought I had it all straight at one point, so now it's all different now. So
But
educate me anew now.
But you know, these have been in for 5 years, I think. So you've had time to catch up.
All right, yeah,
and then there's the Sea Kayak Award, then the Coastal Sea Kayak Award, and they're just sort of personal skills.
Okay.
But including some theory, some knowledge, some understanding of the environment.
Now we're not at leadership yet.
No.
Okay.
And then you have Sea Kite Leader.
Okay.
Now, Sea Kite Leader evolved out of the old 4-star.
Okay.
But the 4-star and the 5-star were essentially just skills awards.
Yeah.
And we thought, why don't we put some leadership in this? Then if commercial companies are looking to employ people, there's some guidance here. They'll know that this particular person, if they've got their sea kite leader, or what was their 4-star, they've gone through a training course, they've gained experience in different areas, in different geographical areas.
Okay.
They've had a 2-day assessment, which has looked at their personal skills and their leadership, and that's as robust as we can get, really, for ensuring that these people are appropriate to take responsibility on the water. But that change came in where the leadership element was added, was probably, I would think, between 2012 and 2014.
Okay.
Where we made it a very explicit part of the 4-star and 5-star as it was, or sea kite leader, advanced sea kite leader as it is now, which is that leadership element.
Okay. Now the coach and assessor, is that still?
So the coach is a different strand. So some people are more interested in leadership, so you go down the leadership route. Some people are more interested in coaching, so they can do the coaching. And
what's the difference between coaching and leadership?
The leadership is pretty much what clubs do. You take people out for a paddle, you go along the coast.
Oh, okay.
It's what you do
with a group, and you're responsible for getting the group there safe.
Yeah,
okay. Coaching, you're actually teaching them skills.
Yeah. And it's going to, often in a more smaller geographical area, you're going to work within a bay and you're going to do exercises and stuff like that, whereas the leadership is more the journeying element.
Okay.
And so what we look at leadership is not, you've got to help people, and I always say you've got to be able to give them some top tips. You've not got to be a great coach. You don't need to be able to analyse every little mistake they're making and look at how you can improve it. Right. But you've just got to have some top tips to help them progress and to undertake their sport.
Yeah. So in training people to be leaders, to lead a group out, I heard the other day you had a nice story about, you had a bunch of people, a class of prospective leaders or coaches or whatever they were, and a number of them did not have wrist watches with them, and you failed them all.
Yeah.
Right? That was coaching or leadership?
That was a leadership. It was at a very basic level. And I said to them, before we got on the water, I said, we'll do this next week. Okay, we're not going to do it today because you can't tell me when it's lunchtime. If I tell you we've got to be back at 2:30, you don't know. I said, you don't know what time high tide is. How can you function safely in an environment when you don't know the time? You know? If you're working with youngsters and their parents are picking them up at 3 and you get back at 4:30 because you haven't got a watch, you know, that's pretty irresponsible.
Yeah.
You need to know, you know, or you're on a journey with them and the tide turns off that headland at 11 o'clock this morning, and you need to be the other side of the headland by 11 o'clock, not sort of, you know, pootling along, having a nice time and thinking about the meaning of life. You've got to be around that headland because when that tide turns, you need to be in a different area.
Yeah, that's easily understood now that you put it in those terms. So the thinking was maybe they all thought they used their cell phones to tell what time it is, and if their cell phones aren't waterproof, then they don't have them. Then
they were all young. They were all young, had their phones, and I just said, look, just go away this week, buy a cheap waterproof watch for, you know, under $10. Keep it on your buoyancy aid. Come back next week, and we'll start again. I didn't charge them for this, you know. It was just nice. I just said, you know, go away. We'll do it next week. We'll reschedule it, but come back with a watch so you can tell me the time.
Yeah. Right. Back when I was getting involved, people would say, you know, if you take this BCU course, you have to use Euro paddle. You can't bring a Greenland paddle. And nowadays, that seems to be changed. Like you can, you show up with a Greenland paddle, and you want to take the class, and it doesn't seem to be a change. Tell me how that works.
So if you look at the equipment you have to take when you go on a British canoeing course, there isn't a list.
Okay.
Because you should, by the time you go for assessment, know what you need to take.
Okay.
And that has come about with experience and talking to other people. So, thinking about the UK, we live in Jersey, and in the summer, You know, it could be 30 degrees, sea temperature, so what's that, 86, I think, in Fahrenheit? In US money, it's about 86. The sea temperature could be 67, 68, and it's light winds. So you need to take one lot of equipment. If you go to Shetland, 600 miles further north, what you'd use in Jersey on a warm summer's day is not what you'd need in Shetland on a day in April.
Mm-hmm.
So to produce a list and say this is what you have to have is actually setting up potential for problems. Because we need to, in Jersey, you need to have stuff to protect people from the sun. You know, you don't need a woolen hat, you need spare peak caps to keep the sun off them.
Okay.
You know, you need to have somewhere some sunscreen so that if your group have forgotten it, they can put it on. You don't need sunscreen in Shetland in April.
All right.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's about getting the experience to be able to make the right judgments. And as long as you can justify what you've got, that should be acceptable to the assessor. As long as you've got what is necessary to keep a person safe, to mend a person if they get injured, to mend a kayak, and to mend some equipment, then that's perfectly all right. Now, I'm always wary of coaches who say, you must have. Everything is up for negotiation, apart from safety.
Okay.
So if you turn up with a Greenland paddle and you say, this is what I use most of the time, and as long as you have got enough experience of Euroblades to be able to say to somebody in your group they're experiencing a little bit of difficulty, just try doing this, then I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be careful of people who are being dogmatic and laying down the rules and saying, this is what you've got to do. Yeah. You've got to be dogmatic about safety, you've got to be certain about safety, but the other things are negotiable, and it depends on the group, it depends on the environment, it depends on the time of year.
The way I see it, that when you've got plenty of experience, you know, you can make those judgments and assess that. When you're just starting out, it's very easy to learn the simple dogma and then just pound that into people's heads because that's the right way to do it. But you know, that's so it doesn't help the student out to be so dogmatic as that.
I completely agree with you. You know, and if you look at coaches who are perhaps just starting on their journey to becoming a coach, gaining experience, they're much more, if you like, the questioning is different because they want to make sure they get the right answer, not an answer which they then have to interpret.
Yeah.
And so, but that comes with experience, and we all improve. You know, we never stop learning. I've learned so much here this weekend, and actually all I've done is rescues. But I've learned lots, you know, over the last few days. And as long as people keep an open mind and continue to want to learn, then that's what we want to create. We want to create an environment where people can learn safely and without judgment. Yeah.
So when I took the BCU 3-star, this might have been, I don't know, 2000, 2001 or something, whatever the curriculum was back then, the instructor told us he wanted us to, he actually did, was a big proponent of the Greenland paddle. He was one of the coaches at Delmarva here. But in teaching the BCU, he said, I want to see you do this with a feathered Euro paddle. And you need to know how to paddle with that, because if you're teaching a bunch of folks and they're using the Euro paddle, you need to understand that paddle to be able to instruct them in that paddle. So put your Greenland paddle down and get your Euro paddle out, and let's do things that way. And so I can see the logic of that, and I think that nowadays that could come back around and be applied the other way. That Greenland paddles become popular enough that you could say, well, you need to know how a Greenland paddle works if you're going to be an instructor, because if that's the only paddle a student has, you need to be familiar with different things and how that works. So, it goes both ways.
Without a doubt. So on this year, on all the assessments I've run, either at Paddle Sport Leader or at Sea Kite Leader, I've taken a set of Greenland paddles and said, can you just show me a little bit about how you might use these or how you might help somebody in the group? Yeah. I've moved to that position.
All right.
And
I'm glad to hear that.
And the BCU, or British Canoeing as it is now, is broad enough to accept that.
Uh-huh.
Now, you might come across the occasional person, coach, who is still, if you like, thinking in a slightly older direction, wishing to be polite. Whereas, we change and we evolve, and the worry is when we don't change, we don't evolve, and we don't keep learning as coaches, or as leaders, or as paddlers.
Yeah.
Overall, British Canoeing now, 4 or 5 years ago, we brought in tidal and non-tidal. Because clearly the issues which were at stake for North America were places like the Great Lakes.
Okay.
Nobody's saying you don't get advanced conditions on there, right? But the water doesn't go up and down under the influence of the moon. There are no tides.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the award was split into tidal and non-tidal. Huh. And it was also for things, for example, in the Mediterranean. Yeah. There's no real tide to speak of in the Mediterranean, but there's no doubt if you paddle in the Mediterranean with the strength of winds that you get there and the sections of coastline with no landing, you can get very serious conditions, but there's no tide. So now, to cater for that, British Canoeing has the Sea Kite Leader and Advanced Sea Kite Leader. It's tidal and non-tidal options.
Okay. Yeah.
So hopefully that's, address the problem. So if you think of the North American sort of scenario, if you go up to Maine or you go to Nova Scotia, you can clearly find tidal conditions and demanding conditions for running, advanced courses. Mm-hmm. Those conditions aren't the same as you'd get on the North Shore Lake Superior. Yeah. But that's not to say that Lake Superior and the North Shore is not a demanding advanced environment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I think British Canoeing, we responded to that. I was part of that group which agreed that we would split into tidal and non-tidal.
Okay. Yeah. The Kayak USA, which starting in the early 2000s took on the whole role of interfacing with what they do in Greenland and here and promoting the traditional aspects of the sport, has from the very beginning taken an approach that they're not going to do set curriculum and do courses in that sense. We have a mentoring model, and we're not going to have star awards or any kind of levels like that, for better or worse. And I find there was a feeling that that's not how things are done in Greenland, so we're not going to do it here. But I think that's not entirely accurate. They've had little award types of things that they've used to indicate a certain level of something. But it seems to me that certainly if you're going to administratively have to run a whole operation, it's an awful lot of work.
Yeah. It's just...
And so by not having to do any of that, you free yourself from all sorts of those tasks. But I find that the downside being that you don't have people that are achievement oriented, and if I've done the 3-star, I need to do the 4-star. If they've taken a rolling class and they've got some rolls, but there's no other official, thing to go further, as well, they aren't as attracted to pursuing it that way. You have any feelings on that?
It's there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. There's the ACA, there's British Canoeing, and they should be flexible enough to meet the needs of the broader paddling community. Okay. And so there should be something that if they wanted to progress, that could be offered here. Yeah. Just because you use a Greenland paddle and you paddle a skin-on-frame kayak shouldn't exclude you from many of the awards which already exist. Yeah. And clearly that would save Kayak USA a huge headache, because it's not easy to set up. Having been involved in the setting up of awards and revisiting awards, it's to get consensus as to what should be in it is almost impossible.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
So you could imagine you get various factions, various individuals would be very vocal about this must be in and that must be in and this shouldn't be in and so like. And at the moment, I get the feeling, this is a real sense of community The people are very supportive. We've been going to kayaking events since the 1980s, and this is pretty much the friendliest event I think I ever go to. Right?
Wow.
And the other thing about it is there is no pressure to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of places you go to, you're under pressure to go out and to perform. And the other thing that's nice here is there's a formal recognition of progression. So you do a new roll, you get a rolling pin. That sort of thing, to me, is what sets this event apart from any other one I've been to. You go to a lot of events, and there's, you know, quite a lot of tall European men in dry suits talking about how they got trashed in the biggest tide race going.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what this is about. This is much more inclusive. You know, it's about it being a community. You know, there's no hierarchy as to which table you sit on for breakfast.
Yeah.
You go to some events, and that certainly exists.
Really?
Yeah. So that makes this a very special event, and that's why I would think, you know, Kayak USA needs to avoid any form of certification.
All right. Have you had a chance to see, like, Inuit instruction firsthand? Whether in Greenland or somewhere, where people being instructed in kayaking in any way?
Not from Inuit as such.
Okay.
So, I mean, I've seen it in place here. I've seen what people have been doing here.
Yeah.
And I'm embarrassed to say, or embarrassed to admit, that really, you know, I've done 10 trips in Greenland, but I've had almost no interaction with the local paddlers.
Okay.
And partly, I think, because of the you know, we've got big European plastic kayaks.
Yeah.
It's been difficult to establish a sort of link with them.
Yeah.
You know, but when we're in Ilulissat and they're down on the slabs in front of the church doing the rolling, we'll go down and watch and sort of try and talk to people.
Yeah.
You know, but the one Greenlander who we did know and we did respect and we did have a lot of input from was Kampe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I first met Kampe in about 2002 in Brittany.
All right.
And, you know, he was such a passionate advocate for all things Greenlandic. But also he wasn't precious. So we had big plastic Italian sea kayaks, and he stored them at his house for us.
Yeah.
You know, and so, I've seen Kampe demonstrating stuff in his pidgin French in Brittany. You know, I've seen Kampe in his house in Ilulissat, and he's talked to me and he's spoken to me about kayaks. You know, it'll be halfway through a conversation, he'll nip out the narwhal tusk from behind the settee, or he'll get the polar bear skin out the shed. And so I feel privileged that I knew Kampe, and I spent a lot of time with him over the years. And I think, you know, for me, the thing about him was he was just hugely humble as a person. The only time he ever got really angry with me was one night we went to feed his dogs, and one of the dogs had got off and was running around, and so I ran to the shop and hid, and Kampe came back later on, back to his truck, and absolutely laid into me, and I said, Kampe, that thing's wild, you know, that thing was going to eat me. And he said, no, it's not. And but yeah, so I've always enjoyed Kampe's company, and I remember sitting in restaurants in Ilulissat with him, and he was the sort of person you didn't need to speak to. You just needed to be in his company, in his presence. And there was an awe about him that you could sit there and he'd have his glass of water and I'd have my glass of beer. And there was so much we could talk about, but there was no need. He was such a special person.
I can remember, I'm an early person, getting up early, and the competitions, I'd get up. I'd be at the place at the beginning when after they said they would open for breakfast, and he would be there early in the morning. We'd sit there together because we were both early birds, waking up. Yeah. Well, the little instruction that I've seen that I'm familiar with, and it's hard not to make assumptions when you don't really have all the full information, but if I can generalize, I don't see that the Inuit model in general has that detailed curriculum kind of analysis going on. It's far more just intuitive. Like you ask Maligak, how do you do the really good forward stroke, and he would just, you just go like this and go like this and go like this. Now I think Maligak has sort of tried to adjust to the Western model of we have to break it all down, but I think more naturally they would you just do it. And if you want me to teach you, I won't teach you. I'll show you. You watch. You can watch as long as you want, but it's on you to figure it out, and I'll demonstrate it. And I don't even have that deep and analytical handle on it because I just do it, and it works for me.
Yeah, it's about feel.
Yeah.
Does that feel right for you? Does that feel effective?
Yeah.
And for each of us, we're different body shapes, we're different sizes, we've got different paddle lengths. It's never going to be the same for two people.
Yeah.
We are different human beings, and what works for one is not going to be perfect for somebody else. And we can look at kayak racing, but we live and operate in a far more dynamic environment than a flat water racing course.
Yeah.
So the model that they have for going really fast for 200 meters is not going to be the model that we can use to paddle 20 miles a day for 18 miles on the trot.
Yeah.
We need to develop our own, which is appropriate for us.
Yeah.
And sometimes, we can look at slightly more effective ways of paddling. So, for example, if you've got to tow somebody, it's better to be able to tow them effectively. If you've got to get a bit of speed on to get around a headland, or you've got somebody who's capsized and you want to get to them quickly. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it is about just developing a forward style, which is appropriate for you, which is good for your body, and which you can keep up for hours on end.
Yeah. So, as with Greenland forward stroke, with the Euro paddle, you would say that it's the same thing. Like there's no one perfect stroke that everybody should be using it. You build your own thing with its own nuances and its own little specialties for your body and your kayak.
I'll probably get shot for saying this, but yeah, it's your own.
Now why would you get shot for saying that?
Because there are people who advocate that they're the advocates of the perfect stroke. This is what you need to do, and that is there is no doubt that you can develop a very efficient stroke.
Yeah.
But it's the environment in which we use that stroke that we develop. That's what's variable, and that's why we have to change it all the time. Mm-hmm. And so there is no one good stroke all the time. If we're in a following wind, we're gonna adjust our cadence. If we're on a headwind, we might lengthen our stroke. If we've got a side wind, we're going to move our hands along the paddle a bit, so we're paddling more on one side than the other. So we've got a longer lever than on the other. Yeah. We do that with Euroblades, let alone Greenland paddles. Yeah. I teach people, if you've got a side wind and your bow is turning up into the wind, if your bow's turning to the left, move your hands along to the right, so you've got a longer lever on your left and you counteract the wind. Yeah. All right. It's that ability to change our stroke to meet the conditions and not being stuck on there is one efficient way of doing it.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. So Nicky, you paddle with him extensively. From your observation, is his forward stroke slightly different from yours?
Yes, it would be.
In what way it is? Describe that.
I think we've both got quite a low style.
Low angle.
Low angle with Euroblades and Greenland paddles. Mm-hmm. I've got a very slow paddle rate, so the paddle rate or the cadence that I paddle at is slower than Kevin's. Okay. And I don't know why that is. Yeah. I think I probably rotate more than he does. But I mean, I think it's what's comfortable for you, really, I think. And because a lot of our paddling is perhaps over distances, you don't want to be doing a big, high, powerful stroke because you'll just wear yourself out. Yeah. You want a comfortable stroke which you can keep going and keep going for a long time in different conditions, as Kevin says. And you also need a different gear, and that's what I find with some people. They paddle, but they don't have another gear. They can't accelerate.
Not gear equipment, a different gear, like a gear on a bicycle.
Exactly. Well, just that they don't have the ability to then perhaps go a bit faster just for this one little bit, because you paddle into a headwind, and if you're going at the same speed, then you can end up just being on the same spot. If you go a little bit quicker, you're overtaking that wind, and so you're going to manage much better. And some people, you find it takes a while for them to get that idea, I think.
Yeah. Kevin, would you feel, you may agree with that, but from watching her paddle so much, how do you see your different strokes? Do you notice anything?
No, I think Nicky's right, with different cadence, and we do measure cadence. I mean, it's one of the few things I use in forward paddling regularly, and I did it here with the mentors, where we looked at what is the cadence. For me, it's the big question in kayaking, how fast should I paddle? What should my stroke rate be? You ask...
Do you actually measure it like strokes per minute, or do you...
left-hand paddle strokes every 5 minutes, for 5 minutes. So
count them in 5 minutes and come up.
So you paddle for 5 minutes, you count how many left-hand paddle strokes, right? And nobody tells you what your stroke rate should be. But you go cycling, and everybody talks about cadence all the time. You think about running, all that sort of thing. But the most fundamental thing we do in kayaking is go forwards, and yet nobody can tell you how fast you should be paddling. What should my stroke rate be? Mm-hmm. And I first came across this in 1983 when we were in Spitsbergen. 5 of us all seemed to be paddling at the same rate. One person always seemed to be paddling faster but didn't get anywhere any quicker.
More strokes.
More strokes as opposed to more speed. And so we started to count. And the 5 of us, whether it was a headwind, a following wind, side wind, whatever, were almost invariably between 135 and 145 left-hand paddle strokes every 5 minutes.
Okay.
The other person was on 180 paddle strokes every 5 minutes. So he was doing 40 paddle strokes every 5 minutes more than us. Yeah. So 12 fours is 480. Times by 8 hours we were paddling each day. So what's that, nearly 3,900. Times that by the 50 days we paddled for, that's just short of 200,000 paddle strokes. Yeah. He didn't get there any quicker. He lost an awful lot of weight. Oh, yeah? So his stroke rate was so much higher. Now I've done that. There's nothing about this. Nobody, you go to a book and ask, where do I find out what rate I should paddle at? Yeah. Nothing tells you that. Really? But I've done this exercise so many times in so many different countries with so many different paddlers, and people who are relatively experienced paddlers pretty much fit within that framework. We did it here on Thursday afternoon with the mentors, and there were a few people were slightly less, but well over half the people were between 135 and 145. Nobody was way off the mark. Yeah. And why was that? Because they're all experienced paddlers and they've developed an efficient rate to go at. But nobody's ever told them that.
All right, with that, I think we've had a very nice discussion here, and I thank you for talking to me, and thank you for being on the Dubcast with Dubside.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was Kevin Mansel and Nicky Mansel, recorded at the Delmarva Paddlers Retreat on October 8th, 2023.